So this is part C of the KhoodeelaarTV Channel, World Exclusive Diagnosis of Fleet Street. Now here on the page 15 of the Times today, Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe is being reported in a truthful way, in a more truthful way than I have seen most of the times in the past, because it says in the last paragraph, part 1, in 2019, she was granted diplomatic protection, a rare recognition of her status as a geopolitical pawn by the Foreign Office. But her family contend that the government, that is the British government, that is the government fronted by Boris Johnson, has failed to act on her special status to pressure the Iranian government. And the last paragraph after that, the last paragraph says, a number of dual British-Iranian citizens are believed to be held by Iran with the intent of pressuring the British government over debt and sanctions. And it's written by Catherine Philp, Philp, diplomatic correspondent. And we shall be talking more about Nazanin in due course. And we shall be doing so as part of the expose of the ongoing racist role and attitude by the Fleet Street papers. Because Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe would not be treated in this kind of reduced way, which is what they're doing on the page 15. She would be on the front page. In news terms, she should be on the front page. She should be the lead story in all the Fleet Street papers, strictly on the basis of the higher emergency and kind of news value of her treatment. And I think that the fact that the Iranians are now going to cook up, as the Time correctly says, that Zaghari Ratcliffe freed as Iran cooks up new charges, I think the Iranians are doing no good, no favors to themselves. It's absolutely kind of disgraceful to use this woman as a kind of pawn. There is absolutely no reason and no gain morally, diplomatically, in any way, except the notoriety and disgrace attaching to the role of whoever is making the serial decisions to put this woman through all this. She's a young woman, her youth is being robbed and denied her, apart from anything else, apart from the fact that her child is back in London, and is completely grotesque because she could not be kind of needed by the Iranians in their dealings with the British. If they are adults, politically adults, the Iranian revolutionary whatever, should be behaving as adults and facing the Johnson-fronted cabal with courage and conviction and principle. This is timid and this is completely stupid and this is cowardly in the extreme sense to put this woman through this. We shall be discussing more on this in due course. Not maybe necessarily in this part, but we shall be doing it. most certainly. Now, the case of Meghan Markle, let's call her Meghan. This is Rupert Murdoch's desperate latest kind of headline, Megxile. Now, they want her to be exiled, and that is what Brenda would want, that is what Kate would want. Now, one footnote here, important footnote, in our getting the exact diagnosis kind of totally right, because we said that the main leader of the harassment campaign that has been ongoing against Meghan had been Kate Middleton, and that is the case because it was Kate Middleton who bullied Meghan, not Meghan bullying anyone. And it was Kate Middleton that reduced Meghan to tears over the whatever the details were, but something around the wedding dress or whatever. The point is that the fact that Meghan was reduced to tears has remained with her. If it hadn't remained with her, she would not have spoken about this in this interview. And the other thing is that they asked, all of them asked, if Meghan's child, the first child that is now named Archie, would be black. Incredible. So on all of those analysis and forecasts and kind of predictions based on the trailers and the teasers and the early releases and the outrageous obsession by the servile Fleet Street papers to Brenda's racist assault, we correctly summarized that it was a racist project to get rid of Meghan. Now, we're making another prediction. Tactically, strategically, they will destroy Harry by putting all kinds of pressure on him to leave Meghan. If that happens, Harry will completely be destroyed too early. So if anyone watching this has any connection with Harry, they must tell him to be very strong and very alert and aware, and not to be duped by any surreptitious tactics to separate him from Meghan. We say that at this stage, and of course the details of this will be updated in due course. Now, about the role of Tower Hamlets Council, the Tower Hamlets Council that has betrayed this child, Shamima Begum, and her co-school friends. We have discussed the various mainly empirical items of evidence to create a kind of profile of Tower Hamlets Council as insensitive, irresponsive, negligent, dishonest, incompetent, corrupt, and criminal and racist. Now, if you look at all those, what do you find? You find that that is a council that is unfit for purpose. That is to say, even if members of the staff in the council were kind of technically aware of a list of their duties as a local council, including, in this context, the duty to safeguard the children, like Shamima Begum and the other two immediate school friends, and the other one that reportedly left a year earlier, and the other one that was to retrieve that one, to make her kind of persuade that one to come back to London, come back home, was one of the reasons why these three girls went there. These are children, not very wise, but these are children, compassionate children, bothered about their welfare of their kind of school friend, and said, let's go and get her. That is teenagers, children. So to what extent was Tower Hamlets Council collectively as a corporate entity, or Tower Hamlets Council, as was exhibited, exposed in the person of the incumbent in the corrupt post of mayor, Lutfur Rahman, for 6 calendar years? To what extent was that exhibition or that exhibit aware of the duties? Now, there are literally thousands of items of evidence that will be produced in further detail if anyone really seriously, factually, evidentially, ethically, legally puts forward a challenge. So until that happens, sir, we are not waiting for that to happen, because there would not be anyone who can make that such a challenge. What we are saying is that there are thousands of items of evidence to show that Lutfur Rahman was from the very beginning, unfit for purpose. It doesn't take knowledge of high caliber and standard to work that out. Lutfur Rahman was put up to become the bogey, to become the agent, become the stooge for interests known and elements known and unknown, identified and identifiable, who wanted him as the stooge to serve their purpose overall by occupying that corrupt post of elected mayor at the expense of the community, at the expense of democracy. Now, one of the most ridiculous things that was bound to happen, and none of the people in Tower Hamlets, either among active so-called members of the Labour Party or not, and among the other members of the other parties so-called, and among the ordinary people who are not kind of actively aligned or listed as members of the Labour Party or of any party, none of those people has shown any capacity for foresight or any capacity to understand the implication, the impact of these publicly paid for posts. I'm the only one. This is not some kind of contest. There is no contest on the evidence of decades of work. And I'm not a community activist. Any moron that calls me a community activist is beyond condemnation. I'm not a community activist. I have many things that are unique and that are not parts of any slogan. Any idiot that calls me community activist is contemptibly stupid and ignorant and disrespectful. Community activist suggests that there is somebody else who is comparable to me in terms of the work that I do. Who is there? There is nobody. Because everything I do is opposite to what the morons do. I do it for the principles. I don't do it for any gain. And I've always been doing this. So don't call me community activist unless there is somebody else who you can put forward strictly based on their record of work. Now, there is nobody that has that record. That cannot be anyone with that record. So don't call me a stupid thing like community activist. Don't do that. And I'm being extremely generous. Think about the work that I do and think about the height and the level and the quality and the standard and the ethics and the morality and the impact and the implication of what I do. If you do think about that, which will take at least 10 years of your life to just think about what I do, you will find that I'm not a community activist. It's an absurd, insulting, infantile, stupid level to call me community activist. Those morons who suck up to the criminals in post in Tower Hamlets Council, those morons doing the so-called ethnicity-linked media, those morons have to understand that we may come from the same kind of geographical country, I and they, but philosophically, ethically, morally, intellectually, we come from two different universes. The morons have no idea just how much work I do every single day for creating and updating a Bangladesh internationally. That is the image. The morons' image is one of crooks, Bangladeshi crooks and criminals. And I create the opposite. So these criminals who have been in alliance with Lutfur Rahman, I'm not saying every single one who is a councillor has been a criminal, remember? But I'm saying the criminal ones who have been in place as elected councillors and have been colluding with Lutfur Rahman, who was incumbent in the corrupt post of mayor at the expense of Tower Hamlets, those criminals failed to understand the magnitude, the depth of generosity that I showed and I have showed to them. I said in January 2010 that it was the wrong thing to do to have an elected mayor post created in Tower Hamlets. And the list is very long. The reason why I said that reason can be divided into dozens of parts. But the most important part, remember we are talking in January 2010, and I was saying to a few people at the Micro Business Center after the meeting had finished, and I'll come back to the meeting we're referring to. I had said that all the indications were that a Bangladeshi would be elected mayor. And if a Bangladeshi got elected mayor, then the reputation of the community, the sense of identity among the people in the Bangladeshi community that had existed up to that point, up to the 5th of January, let's say, 2010, when I think that meeting took place in the Micro Business Center of Greater X Street or in Greater X Street. Then all the sense of, or kind of residual sense of identity and solidarity and for fairness and for equality and other rights and needs of the Bangladeshi community in Tower Hamlets would disappear. And I didn't give the details, of course, because the conversation was kind of hypothetical, based on hypothetical, because this post had not been created at the time that we were talking. So I gave a hypothetical kind of prediction. And I gave it in headline form. I said, our community would be destroyed and democracy would be destroyed. And our community's reputation would be destroyed. Now, all these morons that I'm not naming, but they know, or at least they should know who I am referring to. All these morons were kind of pursuing careers on the back of my campaigns, not one campaign, serious campaigns, addressing all the main policy issues that affect the actual direct delivery: education, housing, employment, racism, accountability, democracy, and all that. So whoever I told this obviously didn't really believe that what I said was more than true. That is to say, it was about to happen. And I knew it was going to happen. And it did happen. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Richard Morey. Richard Morey, the licensed law trader, put QC, branded Lutfur Rahman as guilty of corrupt practice. Now, no need to go into the details of the ruling that he published, Richard Morey published on the 23rd of April, 2015. I had said in January 2010 that our community was the worst prepared community for handling the implication and the impact and the consequences of a post which was there going to be grabbed hold of by a bunch of looters and robbers and thieves. Now that is what I was thinking of, and that is what I believe even now, because apart from my campaigns, there is nothing in the Bangladeshi community that is kind of in existence to address the need for rigorous scrutiny and accountability by those who get in positions by exploiting and by abusing the name and association by them with the Bangladeshi community collectively. Collectively, the community doesn't exist in the sense that it should have by having an organization like the Bangladesh Welfare Association, which has been closed for, nearly 40 years. As I said, the break was in the 1981-83 period, but it closed when the various corrupt groups revived their hostilities, and eventually the Welfare Association at 39 Fournier Street closed. It had only opened once because of me, because I created the only democratic election in 1981. Never before and never since in the whole chronological history of this Welfare Association at 39 Fournier Street has there been an election. And my election was nearly sabotaged by a gang and a criminal, particularly a crook, who was foisted on the election commission that I chaired by another crook, and so on. And let me say again, in the Bangladeshi community, which is almost entirely affiliated to the Islamic faith or Sunni faith or whatever, in the Bangladeshi community, I'm talking demographically. I'm not talking actually factually or ethically. So the demographic composition of the Bangladeshi community in Tower Hamlets and by extension in the rest of London and then beyond, the demographic composition is mistaken as being the same as the moral, the ethical, the democratic, accountable, transparent, and selfless kind of composition. It is not. And as I have been saying, the evidence I have found by unintentionally having access to the interiors of many Bangladeshi occupied homes suggests that 90% or more of the Bangladeshi origin people living in this country, living in London, are committing crimes every day and committing cruelties within the family every day. These are serious observations, and these are serious factors for the absence of democracy, ethics, morality, accountability, compassion, and kindness within the home. So my campaign has been about creating that atmosphere. It has not been kind of supported because most of the people that this kind of campaign or atmosphere would oppose know that they should not be supporting anything that would expose them and destroy their particular side of their culture, the bad side, the negative side, the corrupt and criminal side. So back to Lutfur Rahman. When I was warning people that the mayor system should not be allowed to go ahead, I was conscious, absolutely correctly conscious of what would happen. But the others who were present, including so-called journalists from the ethnicity-linked outlets, didn't give this warning any importance whatsoever. Not in their coverage, not in their kind of packages. So what they did, the ethnicity-linked so-called outlets and their kind of colluders, is treat that kind of campaign, because once campaign, which was the petition to have the referendum, to have the elected mayor, and the campaign supposedly not with any petition but verbally, word of mouth, telling people that the mayor system should not be allowed. And as I have said many times, despite the fact that it was supposed to be, or it was supposedly the no campaign, that is, was supposedly a campaign which was being run by mainly members of the Labour Party, including Abbasuddin alias Halal, who was not leader. The leader of the Labour Party group was Lutfur Rahman. And I shall come back to referring to my conversations with Lutfur Rahman in 2010, including on the day of the referendum, the date in May 2010, when I told him that if he supported the mayor, kind of meant yes campaign for the mayor, while the entire rest of the Labour Party councillors group on Tower Hamlets Council was at least officially or openly saying that they were against it, then that showed that he was a minority of one and he should resign because of principle. I told him that in the middle of the day of the election, and I told him after noticing that about 50 or 40 yards from where I was standing, he had spotted me in the road, off Balance Road, and he was crossing the road to avoid me. And the reason why he crossed the road to avoid me was exactly what I kind of identified, that he didn't want me to kind of question him about his dubious behavior and behavior in defiance of the policy by the majority of the Labour Party councillors, of which he was still leader on Tower Hamlets Council. So I approached him and I told him off. Now he has no idea just how corrupt and ungrateful and stupid he has been. He cannot praise me and say that I am the most kind of suitable person to become the mayor, to become the MP, and all the rest of it from Tower Hamlets. And then he lies to me. How dare he assume that I would not see the connection? So with a person like Lutfur Rahman in the corrupt post of elected mayor since October 2010, what chance was there for any duty owed to children like Shamima Begum to be taken seriously by him or by his corrupt cabal? There was no chance. So I put it to anyone watching this generally, and I put to the people of Tower Hamlets that they behaved irresponsibly and idiotically in voting yes for this corrupt post of mayor. Because as soon as you create a corrupt post of mayor, what begins? It means that elected councillors, no matter how kind of weak and fickle they may be, elected councillors instantly lose any say on what the elected mayor post holder then begins to do. And the elected mayor post holder may be an ungrateful, dishonest liar like Lutfur Rahman, or there can be a dishonest, racist, criminal midget like John Biggs. It makes no difference because the wrong, the badness is inherent in the corrupt impunity from accountability that is given to this incumbent wrongdoer in the wrongdoer post. So from the moment that Lutfur Rahman became, quote, elected in October 2010, up to his time of kind of being kicked out from the same post on 23rd of April 2015, the safety of girls like Shamima Begum was at risk. Was at risk directly I'm saying, resulting from the fact that there was a lack of democracy by vote of the people in the democratically entitled Bara. Now, I ask anyone who disagrees with anything I have said on the facts, to produce the facts to contradict what I'm saying. I am not motivated. And this child, this Lutfur Rahman, was not even biologically born when I began political campaigning action. Remember what I'm saying? So he was not even biologically born. Even if he were biologically born, which he wasn't, he could not factually, truthfully, honestly, democratically, morally deny any of the charges that factually I'm making against him. And why I'm saying all of this is because nobody else will say it. They don't have the experience, they don't have the qualification by work, which is what I do. And they cannot deny what I'm saying because it's all true. And what I'm saying is that these children deserve justice. Nobody said anything. None of the Tar Hamlers Council of Mosques said one little squeak they didn't say that these girls were let down by Tar Hamlers Council. They did not even know that there was a duty safeguarding children, duty and liability on the part of the local council. These morons, including so many morons with beard, didn't even know what the council was about and what the council's duties were. And they still don't know, even now. They have a brainwashed version of Tar Hamlers Council. Even after years of disgrace that Lutfur Rahman brought on the name of the community. When Richard Morey was kind of presiding over the proceedings, and item after item of corrupt behavior came through in the evidence, it was absolutely remarkable that none of these bearded morons, either based as members of the committee of the East London Mosque or not, none of them made any point at all. It was left to me to tell them to their faces, did they know what was going on? And then get a lame kind of response, not even a spontaneous response. So David Panic charging £20,000 for his retention by Manchester City Football Club. Even if he were paid £100,000 by anyone, it's a hypothetical thing because nobody had the money and doesn't have the money to pay anyone anything like that. But assuming that David Panic was capable of being paid that kind of money to protect the reputation of the Bangladeshi community from being smeared and submerged in the way that it has been by the behavior of Lutfur Rahman. David Penny could still not be able to deliver even the fraction of the correct legal advice, whereas I have been producing 100% correct and comprehensive legal advice all the time. So if the morons were to theoretically concede that fact and theoretically offer me some kind of remuneration, do they know how much they would owe me? As kind of charged by David Pennick, they would be owing me millions of pounds every single month, the morons. So no wonder that they are scared shitless of running the commentary on the factual programs on their so-called ethnicity-linked outlets. They have no morality, and they have no compassion, they have no solidarity. They're petty, petty, petty. Even if some of them are not as midget as John Biggs, but they are as bad as John Biggs, as completely insignificant as Lutfur Rahman. And between the two of them, they have completely messed up Tower Hamlets. And it needs to be rescued from that state. And the mayor system is the first one that needs to be scrapped. Because if it is scrapped, then the elected councillors automatically become entitled to at least ask questions. Currently, they are not. Because it's a corrupt, completely contaminated and obscene arrangement whereby these elected councillors secretly go and pay homage So there are, for legal reasons, I'm not disclosing the details of the identities of the individuals on this program, individuals that have been caused harm by the negligence of Towners Council, both children and people above the age of consent beginning. People of all age groups have been denied the service that they've been owed, and they are continuing to be denied the service. And the comparison must stretch all the way to Barnley, Dewsbury, and other places in the north, near the Manchester, kind of greater Manchester area, where the criminals born with the Pakistani origin, but born mainly in England, organized criminals, for at least 20 years, committed rape, abduction, pimping, and all the other things against mainly targeted white girls. And as these things went on, all those councils failed their duty to safeguard those children. And I'm mentioning that as the broader framework of negligence, criminality that have been allowed to be committed and perpetrated by local councils with elected councillors in place. And what the elected councillors did was not just by themselves, but they were aided and abetted de facto by the local police, as the reports say. And the reports have been published, or the summaries of the reports have been published in Fleet Street papers. And the credit has been given to one Times newspaper reporter. But essentially, it is not denied that the police, the elected councillors, the elected councils, that is the unelected officials, employees in those councils, neglected their duties at every stage. As if that was not bad enough, they aggravated their lies and their negligence by mounting counter attacks aimed at the victims of the rapes and grooming and all the rest of it. And these girls were targeted by the councils, by the police, and the gangsters. The collusion was overwhelming. The collusion among the local police, the local elected council, and the councillors, the collusion was rampant. So if that is possible, when the main victims were white girls, then if the victims were Asian girls, the collusion would be even worse. For the simple reason of the operation of what I call prima facie non-entitlement. That is to say, you take a look at the person who is in need of the support and help, and you find that the person is Asian, or the person is of African origin or Caribbean origin. Once that happens, one that is physically apparent, then the people who owe the duty of care and the service to protect these persons from being damaged and harmed, that duty, the level of that duty drops sharply. So, supposing that the mainly white employees in Town Council who were in place during the incumbency in the post of mayor of Luthvaraman, suppose that these mainly white persons knew about something going wrong, not maybe necessarily the actual full details, but they suspected that things were going wrong, in that a number of Asian girls had been targeted and they were communicating, or they were being communicated to by a gang or gangs and by one or more than one communication mode. And if they didn't take any action after that, that they would not have taken any action after that, because wrongly they would think that because these girls were Asian, this didn't matter to the rest of the society. Remember what I'm doing here. I'm actually creating the actual real connection between what happened in Tower Hamlets and how grossly, grotesquely, racistly stupid the reasoning given by the Supreme Court was. The reasoning is summarized in the Times Law Report, so called, that is published today, Monday, the 8th of March 2021. The Supreme Court morons clearly exist on a planet that is inhabited totally by morons. And as I said, the contents of the Supreme Court's version that has been available, and I have seen it's 48 pages, and the contents of the Times report today are different in the details and the kind of use of various kind of expressions, etc. But they're identical in the fact that they're in denial of racism. What I'm referring to is that even if Tower Hamlets Council's white employees or white employees led kind of unit or units getting money under the banner of safeguarding children duties, even if they became aware of any suspicious activities going on, and after being aware, they also became aware that the targets of the activities, suspicious activities, were a group of girls who were Bangladeshi, not white. That is a most certain, distinct possibility of what happened, what could have happened. So if they decided that these girls didn't matter, or that these girls being targeted didn't matter to the rest of the white society, which is what they must have concluded, then they were committing multiple crimes there. And our campaign is saying the Tower Hamlets Council needs prosecuting for that. Because Tower Hamlets Council collectively, and as in the person of the elected Mayor Crook, has form. That is to say, there is a pattern of negligent behavior that can be found on undeniable, undisputed evidence. For example, this 5-year-old girl, the 5-year-old child that was killed directly by the negligence of Tower Hamlets Council. Her grieving mother then entered a phase of her life where her suffering were accentuated and aggravated many times over. Because at every stage, Tower Hamlets Council denied all responsibility and made it very difficult for the child's mother to get hold of the information or get hold of any activities, that evidence that could give her some relief that at least somebody did their best or something. This was the girl who died at the Mile End Park because of the rotting branch that was swing. That was the responsibility of Tower Hamlets Council, and the rotting branch or whatever the swing was attached to collapsed on her, killing the child. So instead of immediately offering all overdue regrets and compensations and support and solidarity and expressing responsibility, Tower Hamlets Council under John Biggs mounted a series of lies and lying denials, thus forcing this mother to suffer exceeding additional trauma. And it took years before the so-called health and safety bureaucracy last year, that is 2020, considered and decided to prosecute Tower Hamlets Council on health and safety ground. Because the health and safety only covers a bureaucratic part. It doesn't cover the other legislative, legal, and grounds for compassion and grounds to prosecute the council for lack of compassion and cruel negligence towards the child and the surviving mother mourning her death. So what I'm saying in this series is that it's not just Shamima Begum and her friends who have been betrayed on purpose by the criminals in posts in Tower Hamlets over the 6 calendar years and since. Because the time that Shamima Begum and her friends, or the date when they were discovered as having crossed into Syria, that was February 2015. Now, February 2015 and February 22nd, 2021, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 6 calendar years. So 6 calendar years and 6 calendar years, 11 to 12 calendar years, let's say, between October 2010 and 26th of February 2021. And during the 11 or 12 calendar years, Tower Hamlets Council continued to commit all kinds of negligence of duties on all kinds of issues. But essentially, when it comes to children, it was brazenly in breach of its duties all over the place every time. And as I said in the previous broadcast, Debbie Jones, who is now retired, she was for too long in post of the Director of Social Services. Debbie Jones is a liar, as is every single mayor that has been in post into our Hrs Council. And apart from the fact that there was within the Bangladeshi community, in the context of the reference to Shamima Begum and her friends, the absence of a properly working advisory advocacy organization that the Welfare Association should have been, and one that I actually put it in course of becoming, that has contributed seriously and significantly to the fact that these girls were actually allowed to be exposed to life-destroying kind of diversion. And the responsibility for that lies with all the mayors and all the directors in post in the name of social services. And I'm saying that part of this campaign is to demand from Tower Hrs Council and all these people apologies and immediate sufficient sums in compensation to all the families, and in particular also to Shamima Begum, wherever she is. And the other thing that we are demanding, and here is the record, that this child, who is now just out of her kind of child age, should be provided immediate help in getting her back. That is the demand. That's not all the demand, but that is the most important part of the list of demands that I'm making as part of the compensation campaign for justice for Shamima Begum. And we shall be talking more about Shamima Begum and others in due course. So this one is ending at 10 minutes to 4 local time in the UK. That is to say 10 minutes to 4 GMT. That is 15:50 hours GMT on Monday the 8th of March 2021. We shall of course be continuing